Hello, everyone. We're about to get started. Philip has muted everyone but me, and we are going to start by hearing David play the prelude, Circle of Life.
Good morning. Welcome to Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Samantha Evans, and I am one of 7 worship associates who collaborate with our minister in planning Sunday worship services. We are broadcasting directly from Greenbelt and other locations in Prince George's and Montgomery County. We are joyfully here together in a virtual setting. Paint Branch strives to welcome all, whatever your country of birth, your beliefs, your race, your gender, identification, physical abilities, or financial status. We affirm that these things do matter, and we have all found our way to Paint Branch. I am grateful that you guys have all chosen to be with us here for your spiritual journey. Before we move into worship, let's brush up on our Zoom skills. Find that mute button, the microphone icon, and make sure you are muted. Find the bubble for your chat screen. These are in different places on your screen depending on what device you're using. You can set your own pace for reading the chats by scrolling up or down, or if you'd like to mute the chats, you're able to do that. You may also be able to change the screen from speaker to gallery view, which lets you see more than one person at a time, unless a meeting host is trying to spotlight the speaker. Just a reminder that we are recording on Facebook Live as well as Zoom. Right now in the chat, please say how many people are in attendance in your conversation. 1, if it's just you. More if you have multiple people viewing. That way we can get a sense of how many are attending the service today. If you are visiting for the first or second time, please post who you are in the chat and provide contact information if you would like for us to get in touch with you later. After the service, we will have our coffee hour breakout rooms. Stay on Zoom and you'll be grouped at random with several other participants. You will have the option to stay for coffee or leave. We will remind you at the service again.
Good morning, and welcome to Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Chris McCann, your religious educator. The last couple of days have been so warm and lovely, and a sign that we're barreling toward summer. We may be grieving canceled summer plans. We may be wondering how to adapt to another season in quarantine. And we wait. We wait to see what changes will come during this great pause. Our opening reading this morning is usually attributed to an anonymous source. The source is not anonymous. The source is an enslaved preacher whose name, like so many, is lost to time. Thankfully, we have these words, which are some of my favorite about change. We ain't what we ought to be. We ain't what we could be. We ain't what we're gonna be. But thank God, we ain't what we used to be. Please join me in singing hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
We will read the unison chalice lighting displayed on the screen, first in English and then in Spanish. I will now light the unison chalice. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind, the helping hands, the loving heart, and the radiant spirit. Encendamos or el Unitarismo Universalismo. Esta es la iglesia de la mente abierta, de las manos amigas, del amor, del corazón y del espíritu radiante.
Thanks, Sam. I do the same all the time. You did a good job. Last evening during our family worship, I spoke with some of our young friends about the song Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. We talked about how it's an optimistic song, full of welcome, and of course, a verse about change. We spoke about how change can be scary because it might mean a loss of control or something unknown. It also might mean something good is coming. And of course, it almost always means that we learn something. I asked what they loved about Paint Branch, and it was mostly their friends and the Glen. I asked what they might change about Paint Branch to make it even more welcoming. The suggestions were greeters whose sole job it was to orient our newcomers to all things Paint Branch and to answer questions, more cooperation among the adults, more DIY projects in the Glen, more music that isn't hymns, and one particularly cool person suggested a banner that people walk under from the parking lot that reads, Paint Branch is glad to welcome you. I want to thank these participants for their suggestions and their thoughtfulness, their wisdom and humor. Our kids are extraordinary people, and they are well worth knowing. Now we're going to hear from Renee Katz singing A Change Is Gonna Come.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Well, I go to the movie and I go downtown. Some people keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. So I go to my brother. I said, brother, help me, please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. And oh, there were times when I thought I wouldn't last for long. Now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Thank you so much for beautiful. Change is one of my least favorite words. And I'm not just saying that in light of how COVID has altered my life, but in general, even before my world was turned upside down 2 months ago, change and I were not friends. Change fills me with dread and anxiety. When I think of change, it's the negative that I focus on. I spiral as I think of all that could go wrong. I will say the one benefit of growing older and years of wonderful therapy is that I can now stop the spiraling thoughts. But my ability to influence the process hasn't affected that I still see change as the enemy. And I'm honestly not sure why. I would not be who I am today if my life was stagnant. Change brought me to a new state 8 hours away from my parents for college, where I met my 2 best friends. Change led me to law school, and when I withdrew, it led me to Paint Branch, where I found my religious community. Change brought me some odd first jobs that I'm sure one day I will enjoy telling stories about, like working at FedEx Field. Change brought me my amazing, perfect dog, who in turn taught me the joy that comes with a regular sleep schedule. Y'all, it's really great. I suggest it. Change brought me to my Master's of Social Work program. And yes, change has also brought me grief of lost loved ones, the sorrow of actions not taken, of wishing words were left unspoken. Change has brought me further and closer to loved ones. And that's why I struggle with change. It's the unknown, the lack of control over what could majorly impact my life. And yet, on reflection, it is in this unknown where I have found some of life's greatest joys. That doesn't change the struggle I feel in light of the large amounts of change I feel like I'm still experiencing every day. But it does give me hope that in this time of change, I will learn something about myself that will guide me in my future.
Intonation. We'll now hear from David playing the intonation, Journey On, and you can post joys and sorrows in the chat box.
May we hold all of these and one another in love and kindness, so that this congregation may be a source of strength and comfort, courage and hope in the days and weeks ahead.
The first time I preached here at Paint Branch, I shared that I have a joke about myself, that every sermon I preach should be titled, "Don't be afraid of some change." This is because I love to preach about change and because I'm known to shift direction at the last minute. And here we are, a whole service dedicated to don't be afraid of some change. True to form, I will be preaching about change, and there was a shift in direction. Initially, this service was about the changes religious education was undergoing at Paint Branch and the new direction we would be taking. It was to be the culmination of an on-site weekend retreat. This was 1,000,000 years ago in January. before we decided to move our services entirely online, before schools and offices and daily life were shut down, before I knew that I would be leaving Paint Branch. And so change came to the changes we were planning, and it's almost laughable now to think about planning change. It brings to mind the old adage, if you want to make God laugh, tell her your plans. It makes me wonder how much we're ever in charge of change. Most of you know by now that I love change. It's my favorite. I love to change systems, to change institutions, to dream up new ways of doing and being church. Great, big change. And before I go on, I have a confession to make. My wonderful husband bought me a new lap desk for my computer, as the old one is cracked and broken and not up to the task. Sometimes I even pinch a finger in one of the cracks and it hurts. I hated the new one. It wasn't big enough. It didn't have little cups for my pens. It was weird and unfamiliar. My wonderful husband returned the lovely new lap desk. A few days later, he reminded me that he had bought a new comforter for our bed to replace the one that is now nearly a decade old. He wondered when I might like to try it out, and I shrugged and said, I don't know. When he extolled the virtues of the new bedding, I turned to him and whined, why do you keep wanting me to do all this new stuff? Change is hard, y'all. I'm still using the cracked lap desk. I haven't put the new comforter on the bed. I've become way too attached to my old, formerly useful stuff, entrenched in the familiar, even when I pinch my finger in the crack and hurt myself. And so I wonder, in our lives and in our churches, what are our versions of cracked lap desks and decades-old comforters? What are we holding on to that feels comfortable, or at least familiar, but has outlived its usefulness? I spoke with a friend of mine recently who told me all the things she didn't miss while in quarantine. She didn't miss having to run her kids hither and yon every day to their various activities. She didn't miss going to church. She's not a UU, so we'll give her that one. And she's very easily let go of putting academic pressure on her kids. She's enjoying the creativity her kids are displaying and how they spend their time without all of these things. And she's enjoying the slower pace of family life. She's noticing her family and her life in a way that all the busyness of routine didn't really allow. So what about us? What about you? What about Paint Branch? What have you noticed about necessity and priorities now that we've been forced to shift them? What are you missing? What are you relieved that you don't have to attend to anymore? Has any of it surprised you? Have others surprised you? How might you carry these shifts into the future, these changes that came of no real choice of your own? When you think about returning to normal, what feels light? What feels heavy? Have you imagined the burdens you might just decide to never pick up again, or at least to manage them differently? And what about the work of Paint Branch? I know it's true for me and likely true for others that we get very caught up in the work of church and forget the being of church. This doesn't mean that the work isn't important, but I wonder what we will all consider individually and collectively to simplify, to reimagine, to stop pinching our fingers in. When the day comes that we can finally be together in person, there will be so much joy, so much grief, so much of everything that it might be impossible for a while to do much more than just be together in the midst of all the emotion. No matter what work a church does well, being together in the thick of things is church at its best. And speaking of church at its best, it's time to address the other change. I will be leaving Paint Branch in a few short weeks, and there are lots of emotions to go around on that topic too. As Paint Branch considers the change in professional leadership, as well as all the changes being brought to us compliments of our novel virus, I want to remind you of who you are at your best. A lot of people have remarked how much they love the energy and enthusiasm I bring to my work, and I do certainly bring those things. What you might not know is how very hard it is to maintain that when it isn't matched. And Paint Branch matched my every enthusiasm. This is the first time in my professional life I can recall this happening at such a sustained level. Yes, I bring energy and enthusiasm, and you do too. So much so that my husband and daughter came once to support me the first time I preached and never left. Paint Branch is the third church I've served, and this is the first time Zoe and Aaron felt like real people in church and not just a curiosity attached to me. You did that. You being so genuinely curious and lovely made them want to wake up obscenely early on a Sunday, drive for an hour, and involve themselves in the vibrant life of this church. I've watched Paint Branch grapple with some very difficult and painful things, and I've watched many of you engage, slowly, painfully, awkwardly, imperfectly, the way real change happens. I've seen Paint Branch adapt to the way we had to change worship, and lots of you even learn new technology to do it. You've extended so much grace and patience to the worship leaders, sense of humor intact as we keep trying more things. Many of my colleagues have been reporting low worship attendance numbers, but not Paint Branch. We didn't even have the yearly post-Easter attendance plunge, not even close, because Paint Branchers show up. Paint Branch has been through so many changes in its history, and it's a testament to all of you that this community remains robust, resilient, committed, energetic, and enthusiastic. Whatever Paint Branch becomes in the months and years to come, whatever you decide to hold on to or relegate to blessed and beloved former usefulness, I hope that you'll continue to not be afraid of some change, to be ever adaptive, ever graceful, ever church at its best. Now please join us in singing hymn number 1010, We Give Thanks.
The mission of this church carries on in these uncertain times and is more important than ever. We are so grateful to have the financial support of our members and friends. Please give as generously as you are able. This Sunday's offering can be received using several methods that will be listed in the chat bar. Online donations through Breezer Text and mail donations to the church office still work. Offertory music is Changes by Phil Oakes, played by David Chapman.
Thank you, David. As I'm looking at the time, our service is running so short this morning, which could be very exciting because maybe we can spend some more time in our breakout rooms talking with one another. In closing, I want to say I once worked with an interim minister, Greg Ward, that taught me that anxiety and curiosity both ask the same question: what's going to happen? Anxiety asks the question with fear. Curiosity asks with wide open wonder. And curiosity is the antidote to anxiety. We only need to change the way we ask that simple question. As we move through all of the uncertainty of what may change in our lives, my hope is that we can frame the question with wide open wonder. Please join me in singing Fuente de Amor, Spirit of Life.
So I think we've lost David's feed. And this is Rachel and Eric. And we are just thoroughly enjoying being part of this service as observers and not responsibility. But we're going to sing Spirit of Life. You got a key?
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Oh, when I am in the sea, sorry, move in thy hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you so much, Eric and Rachel, for stepping in. You were lovely. I will now extinguish our unison chalice. You are welcome to stay as we are randomly divided into chat rooms or leave early. Thank you so much for joining us for Sunday worship service today.